Hey guys, Yulia here. So today I'm going to talk about climbing hydrangea or hydrangea petiolaris. And the one that I have right behind me, I planted 15 years ago. And that's the thing about hydrangeas. They do not do anything for 5 to 7 years. And they really mature around year 10 when they start to fill in and really blossom beautifully. So this plant is not for an impatient gardener. I am personally a very patient individual. I did not get my driver's license until I was almost 30, so I can take all the time in the world and wait for plants to fill in and start blooming. So that was the reason why I planted this beautiful specimen here, because I knew it's not really going to do anything for a long time, but then one day it will be spectacular, which it is. So about climbing hydrangeas, they are very versatile plants. They can grow in the sun or shade, even heavy shade, but you cannot expect a lot of flowers in a heavy shade from this plant. And the exposure to the sun really depends on where you are in the world, in the country, and what zone you are in. Let's say you are in deep south, let's say zone 8, you cannot plant this plant in a southern location. It will just fry. So it will probably be better in a northern location. Now my hydrangea is planted dead north on our house, and it is still blooming beautifully. I probably would have had more blooms if it was western exposure, eastern exposure, or southern exposure in my zone 6, but I think it's still doing pretty well. Now, one of the most common questions that I get asked about climbing hydrangea is, does this damage your walls? And the answer is kind of complicated. Yes, it will damage your walls if your walls are already compromised. So if you have any holes in your siding, if your siding is lifted, or if your brick is damaged, it will invade those spaces. And also, it does grow with the help of rootlets, aerial rootlets. And those rootlets leave marks on paint and siding and any other wall surfaces. So you have to keep that in mind. And I think that is probably the most important part of this video, is that any climbing plant, especially as large as this, there are some well-behaved ones like clematis, but most climbing plants is like a long-term relationship. And like in any relationship, there is some give and take. You get a beautiful romantic look of this plant, gorgeous flowers, but at the same time, it is a faster growing plant at some point, and it will leave some marks on your walls. So definitely think about this before you plant something like this on your house. Now, we are going to repaint our house in probably a couple of years, and I will cut this plant back probably in half. It will be just fine. And this way, the painters will have an opportunity to scrape the paint, which they always do anyway. So they will clean up all of those marks of the rootlets, so that's not a problem. So I got a little bit closer to the hydrangea, and as you can see, the flowers are a lace cap type flower, and they can get quite large, up to foot wide, which is beautiful. But this is a very strong plant, so it's not a plant that you would plant on a small trellis of 6 foot tall. It needs a very strong support, so a pergola or an arbor of some sort that can sustain a plant of this size and weight, but it does best when it's planted next to a wall. It can be planted on trees, both dead or alive. It is not a parasite. It will not kill a living tree. It's just using it for its support. But where it comes from, its origin is China and Himalayas, and it actually trails over the rock walls where it looks gorgeous. But I would not recommend planting this plant as a ground cover if you are in urban or semi-urban areas, because there could be some rodent problems. And actually it is a problem or an issue with a lot of climbing plants or trailing plants like that. They can attract rodents if they're planted as ground cover. When they're planted against the wall, that's not an issue, and actually they attract birds this way, and birds really love to build nests in this growth. But this plant is not fussy with the soil or the water or pH. It's really easy growing. It just needs a little bit of time and a chance to start growing because it is very, very slow to start. But I hope I answered a lot of questions about this beautiful climbing hydrangea. I hope you guys have the patience to plant one and maybe see one bloom in your garden one day. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are safe. I hope you guys are gardening, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye. Climbing hydrangea. Did that make sense to you? Hear the chanting? It's cap type. That's a very loud car. Watering, blah blah blah. Don't grab the. Da da da. Okay, covered everything.